I want to pose another question to the audience. We're going to talk a little bit about some specific therapeutics, therapeutic platforms. So I'm going to pose question number 2 to the audience. That question is, what technologies are you currently using or exploring for future use? And there's a host of them listed there. mRNA, monoclonal antibodies, tRNA, antibody-drug conjugates, pDNA, viral vectors, T cells, CAR T, CRISPR, VSAB, LNP, exosomes, oligonucleotides, or other. Make your selections. I think we're making that one a. Is that a choose as many? Yeah, that's it. You can choose as many as you wish there. And we'll discuss that. We'll discuss that shortly. But speaking, staying on the topic of actual therapeutics and vaccines, we've got a couple questions related to that from the audience I want to address. One, we've spent a bit of this conversation early on talking about vaccines specifically. What about therapeutics? To what end? I guess, Jeff, I'd like to start with you. To what degree have we failed or succeeded to develop therapeutics in response to this pandemic, and what role do we anticipate beyond vaccines? What sort of therapeutic? What role do we anticipate therapeutics needing to play in future public health emergencies? Jeff, thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. I think that they can play an absolutely critical piece. I think there are new therapeutics that have recently been approved for COVID that in clinical trials appear to do an excellent job. So yeah, it's important. It's not only about the vaccine. It's also about what happens after a person is infected and how to actually treat that person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Adrian, you want to weigh in on that one?
Yeah, I think, again, concur with that response in that I think it's got to be a combination. Obviously, vaccines for a larger part of the populations is a very effective short-term measure. I think therapeutic antibodies, particularly for ICU patients, for those with particular sort of medical conditions, and for its broader efficacy, I think it's got to be one of those where there's a balance. There is a danger that because of the immediate response and because of the size of sort of public sort of information, that everyone believes that vaccines are the only part. It's a very substantial part, but therapeutic antibodies very much part of the overall combo solution.
Yeah. Let's take a look at those polling question results. Again, we gave quite a few options here, but I'm curious, I guess my question to the panel on this would be, what modalities you perhaps anticipate, or platform technologies, do you perhaps anticipate will need to receive focus, are likely to become answers to the public health emergencies that we may face in the near term? Adrian, let me start with you since you're on my screen. Do you have thoughts on what platform technologies or modalities you anticipate may deserve more attention than others to ensure we're ready to move agilely towards therapeutics and prophylactics in the event of our next public health threat?
Yeah, I mean, probably a little bit biased in that Lakes BioScience, one of the core areas of our business is MABs, and that kind of is reflected in the polling, just looking through some of the results. And look, again, there needs to be a balance, but certainly from a monoclonal antibody therapy perspective, that broad efficacy and that broad benefit to patients is something that I think we've got to maintain a focus on.
Jeff, I suppose if I asked you that question, you might have a bias as well.
Yeah, I agree with with Adrian. I think, you know, we've been developing a very novel platform called Rapidvacs, and the whole idea of Rapidvacs is to enable rapid response to emerging biological threats. So, but this is only possible with a favorable regulatory environment that allows us, you know, like under COVID with EUA, that allows us to move into the clinic quickly and you know, advance through the clinic as quickly as possible. You know, we're putting together a manufacturing and distribution capability, but the idea is to use our platform to really rapidly respond to you know, to emerging biological threats, either as a vaccine or as a therapeutic as well.
Yeah. John, do you see any specific activity in terms of platform technology or modality in the emerging biopharma space that you spend your days in? Any trends there?
So I mean, I'd agree with Jeff and Adrian certainly on their approaches as well. And I think one thing that we are seeing a lot of early stage activity around now is what is the approval of mRNA technology in a vaccine open up for potential future pipelines. So we're seeing a lot of RNA-based companies in the oncology and therapeutic space coming within the incubator. And I think that's one of the interesting things that I think will come out of the pandemic is how did that approval open up a whole new sector and a whole new technology platform for other therapeutics.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I want to take a couple of questions from the audience. We've had some interesting ones. Again, there are a couple questions now that kind of focus on whether or not we've done a good enough job of developing and distributing therapeutics as opposed to vaccines to treat people who are, you know, in dire need of treatment. And I anticipate, you know, that it's a great question now, and it'll be a great question the next time something arises, especially in the time between identification and development of, no matter how agile, development of a vaccination effort. So, I mean, I guess the question would be, do you see a shortfall or perhaps a gap right now in terms of support from private or public support for therapeutic development? Do you anticipate that moving forward? Adrian, I'll ask you whether you see that happening over across the pond.
Certainly, here in the UK, I would say that the balance is very much towards vaccines. Therapeutic antibodies tends to be a secondary treatment and a secondary consideration, and therefore sits in that order when it comes to the evolution of capability. I think looking from here over the pond, I think in the US, and I'd be interested in people's views, but I think there's been a much more balanced approach with vaccines and therapeutic antibodies.
Mm-hmm. Jeff or John, any care to weigh in on that one? Where we see the therapeutic effort heading from here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, you know, there's many modalities out there. But I agree with Adrian. I think that, you know, there's a lot of work going on in antibody therapeutics right now, in ADCs. mRNA is very new, but there's a tremendous amount of work going on there as well. I mean, as to which one is going to be best able to respond to a new pandemic, that's, you know, that's really anyone's guess.